Have you ever sat down with your kit, opened your sketchbook, and had a blank about what to nature journal? This happens to me too. One of my favourite things to do is to come up with nature journal prompts to get folks started. Over on my podcast, I alternate interviews with nature journal prompts, and I've decided to start turning those fortnightly prompts into videos here on YouTube too. Today's prompt is this: find beauty in decay. We're so fascinated by everything that's fresh and new, but aging, change, decay, and decomposition, these are amazing processes that are such an important and beautiful part of nature. I'm going to show you my inspiration for this prompt and how I tackled it, and then I invite you to find your own example of something in nature that's going through the process of change and decay, and see if you can capture this process in your own nature journal. Today's prompt came to me because of an experience I had with some cuttings that were given to me by a friend. They were actually cuttings from a white mulberry plant. I put the cuttings into the soil and I was imagining them growing into healthy new bushes, but instead they started to shrivel and dry and curl up. As you can see, I didn't succeed in propagating the mulberry plants, but the leaves were absolutely stunning as they were slowly changing and decaying. So, of course, I decided to put them in my nature journal. I was so drawn to the muted greens and the way that the veins were becoming even more prominent as the leaves dried up. So much texture and colour variation, and to me these changes were so much more rich and lovely than the original perfect leaves before they started to dry. I was so taken by all of the leaves that it was hard to choose which one I wanted to sketch. And then, of course, I had to decide which angle to sketch from, but eventually I settled on one favourite. I spent time sketching the leaf using a mechanical pencil, noting down the main outline, the prominent veins, and where the leaf was curling over. I then went over these pencil lines with a thin fine liner pen. I like this step because it solidifies the lines and acts as a nice guide when I add colour. I then erased all of the pencil lines. I usually use a kneaded eraser for this job because it's cleaner, but I've lost mine, so I used this regular one that I found. For this painting, I used Archer's watercolour paper and my favourite little pocket palette from Art Toolkit. I have a bunch of different colours in this tiny palette, but for this whole painting, and really for the vast majority of my nature journaling, I only use the three primary colours: yellow, cyan and magenta. I find this so much easier and it's more intuitive. Mixing colours used to confuse me, but after I learned a little bit of colour theory, it now feels really natural and easy to just mix all the colours from these three. I test them out by creating these little colour swatches in the corner of my page, and at this point I'm trying to find a colour that will match the lightest creamy yellow that I see on the leaf veins. Once I find that colour, I paint the whole leaf, and this will be a sort of base. Watercolour is all about starting light and building up into darker colours layer by layer, leaving the lightest parts to shine through. Halfway through my painting session, this male Australian king parrot flew over to see what I was doing. I might put him in my nature journal next because his colours were so beautiful. I work slowly in each little section of the leaf, mixing and adding the colours that I see. Sometimes a tiny part of the leaf will have a mixture of greens and peachy colours and yellows, so I drop these in together and let them blend on the paper. It's a slow process, but it's really lovely and meditative, and I don't mind how long it takes because I'm just enjoying the colours and getting to know this leaf as I go along. Because in watercolour you need to leave the lighter areas, and because this leaf has so many tiny light coloured veins, I work really slowly to leave these sections unpainted, and I use the very tip of my brush to add these details in. I added these darker sections to the end of the leaf to emphasize the shadows that were created when the leaf was curling over. And I found that even though I was working carefully, some of the details in the thin veins had been lost, so I used a white gel pen to add the highlights back in. I used the gel pen again at the end just to finish off and emphasize these highlights. At the very end, I added some deeper colours to the stem of the leaf and tried to tidy up the veins and colour them yellow instead of the white of the gel pen. And that's it. That's my exploration of the beauty of decay. So my invitation to you is to find something that's changing, aging, decomposing, or decaying, and see if you can capture this beautiful process in your nature journal. There's so much texture and colour and interest that you can see in this process. I don't suggest you let your plants die just to find a subject, but anywhere you look in nature, you'll see this happening. Choose something to focus on and capture the beauty of decay in your nature journal.